it is very critical, this work of this unit. Because we must remember, the OECS Economic Union is a strategic path to assist us in these small, vulnerable countries to enhance our capacity to address more efficaciously the challenges from the external environment in the interest of our people. That's what it is fundamentally about. So that a strategic quest for an economic union is to ensure that we are lifting the quality of life of people through a number of decisions which we will take in education, in health, in the judicial system, in employment, in investment, in trade, and so on and so forth. Now, there is, Mr. Speaker, honorable members, a range of areas identified for functional cooperation. We know the range of areas already. They're repeated and they're listed in the treaty. And as to the purposes, I think we find them on Article 4, the purposes and functions of the organization. We see A to G, the main purposes, and in 4.2, we have items going down to W. So there are 20-odd specific areas of functional cooperation, covering the whole gamut of public policy and social and economic and political policy. But I want to draw the attention of honorable members to Article 5.3, which addresses the issue of delegated legislation as outlined in Article 14. But this is done in a manner where the treaty has to be consistent with our existing constitutions, as stated in Article 5.4. And when we look at Article 14, we see 14.1, areas of legislative competence for the authority, the common market, including the customs union, monetary policy, which is exercised through the Monetary Council, trade policy, maritime jurisdiction and maritime boundaries, and civil aviation exercised through the Eastern Caribbean Civil Aviation Authority. These are areas in which the authority is accorded, by virtue of Section 5.3, the delegated powers and with the areas of legislative competence. In 14.2, there is legislative competence to common commercial policy, environmental policy, and immigration policy. Now already, one can see what is the architecture. The Commission and the Assembly being very important institutions in building the governance apparatus. And then we see greater authority being given to the OECS authority, which is the heads of government, to make delegated legislation. This is akin to the statutory body which may make delegated legislation, or indeed the cabinet itself of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And you do so within the framework of an enabling statute. The lawyers will tell us whether in addition to this revised treaty, we need to have specifically an enabling statute to ground some of these other matters. Mr. Speaker, I want to touch on an area which would be absolutely fascinating for the persons who looking for real bread and butter stuff. The economic union. And I want to zero in right away on freedom of movement of persons. Article 12 in the protocol, that's at page 42. Article 12 in the protocol is not to be confused with Article 12 in the treaty itself. The protocol is different to the treaty. The protocol is the attachment to the treaty addressing the issue of economic union. It begins by saying, under the rubric free movement of persons, 12.1, freedom of movement for citizens of protocol member states, those are the 6 independent countries of the OECS, shall be secured within the economic union area. Straight off. 12.1, freedom of movement is secured. The Honorable Minister of Agriculture has in his hand the Treaty of Chaguaramas. If you'd pass it and lend me, I'll draw immediately at Article 45 in the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas. You will see the difference in this CARICOM treaty and in this one, the OECS Economic Union Treaty. This one says freedom of movement of citizens of protocol member states shall be secured. It's not a goal, it's not a dream, it's not a quest. Shall be secured. No. What does Article 45 says in the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas? Member states commit themselves to the goal of free movement of their nationals within the community. So this one has free movement as a goal. This one have it secured right away. Fundamental difference. Then Article 46 in this then goes on to say in the CARICOM Treaty, says as a first step, we'd accord the following categories of community nationals the right to seek employment in their jurisdictions. And what are those? University graduates, media workers, sports persons, artists, and musicians. And since then, the heads of government have added non-graduate teachers, non-graduate nurses, artisans, if you have the Caribbean vocational qualification, the CVQ qualification, domestic workers, if you have the similar CVQ qualification for those areas. Those are the only categories for which you can get freedom of movement in CARICOM. And you have to have what is called a skilled national's certificate issued by any one of the states to those persons who qualify. What is said here in Article 12 of the OECS Economic Union Treaty? 12.2. Remember 46 says here, as a first step, these categories. We see 12.1 says it's secured. 45 in CARICOM says it's a goal. What do we go on to say in 12.2? Here. Such freedom of movement shall entail the abolition of any discrimination based on nationality between citizens of the protocol member states as regards employment remuneration and other conditions of work and employment. So if you take an agricultural worker, if you take a clerk who is not qualified to hold a CARICOM Skills National Certificate, if such a person is trying to travel through the CARICOM member states, let's say Barbados or Trinidad, and they turn up at the airport, they could question them, they could do all sorts of things with them to deny them entry. But if a Vincentian goes to Grenada or Antigua, or a St. Lucian comes to St. Vincent, a Dominican, and they turn up at the airport, and the immigration officer says they're OECS national, and the immigration officer says, what are you coming to St. Vincent to do? Or in the case of St. Lucia, they ask a Vincentian, what are you coming to do? Any Vincentian. Or coming into St. Vincent, any Grenadian or Dominican. You say, sir, I am coming to look for work. They can't deny you entry. But they could deny you in the CARICOM. All the immigration officer will say, well, okay, fine. You're coming to look for work. How much money you have in your pocket? You say, I have $200 in my pocket. You say, all right. You should be able to get to Koch by a friend and look for work for a few days and so on. You have some means to start a search. That's the difference. Of course, if you're a criminal and your name is on the police watch list, and there are lists, they will say, no, we have our own homegrown criminals, but we don't need no technical assistance, so you can't come in. That's how it's going to work. I want everybody to understand what is the difference. I want everybody to understand what's the difference between CARICOM and what is the OECS.